All right, to all the new and returning members, welcome. This is part one of our L3Harris panel / general body meeting. And we have two very nice speakers here today to talk to you about the technical communication fields and their experience with it. So I guess, Mo, do you want to go first?
Sure thing. So as I said, my name is Melissa. I am a UCF grad. I have an English degree with concentration in tech writing at Technical Communications. I graduated in 2021. Before that, I did an internship with L3Harris in the summer of 2020. When I graduated in 21, I had a job already waiting for me at L3Harris, so I was able to jump straight into that. And I've been working at the company now for probably like a year and a half. Chloe, you want to give another quick summary of your background?
Sure. So I have had the pleasure of just joining the L3Harris team. I didn't really have to do an internship. I would have been happy to, but they saw my experience. They saw that I was driven, and so they took me on. They took a chance with me. And since I've been here, I've had the pleasure of working on 3 different programs that have all taught me so much. For anyone who's thinking of joining L3Harris, it really is a very diverse, inclusive place where you just get to learn so much. It's fast paced, but you always have people to ask questions. So it's a good place to be for sure.
Awesome. So do you guys, John, I think you'd mentioned that there might be some prepared questions, or do you want me to just kind of start going?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we can, I think it would be good if we all start going and sharing everything that you'd like to, and then we can do questions closer to the end of our time.
Cool. Chloe mentioned projects. She's worked on 3. I've worked on a handful. As a new college grad, I tend to sort of get odds and ends, bits and pieces of things. So someone will walk into my office and say, here's a series of 3 documents and we need them to be reviewed. Or, hey, come learn this piece of equipment real quick, write something up, it's got to get turned around. So I don't, probably I've touched probably 15 projects. We have some really, really cool projects at L3Harris. You can look at our website and see some of the stuff we're working on. I think the F-35, there's a bunch of cool pictures on there. We've got an awesome robot. The T7 is all over media right now. It's a bomb, an ordnance disposal robot. It's very cool. I got to get my hands super deep into that manual over the summer. But it's varied. It's stuff all over the place. We are actually part of, there are several different segments in L3Harris, and we all work in the space and airborne, is that right? Space and airborne segment. That doesn't mean that it's like I said, I worked on a robot. So it's not just things in the sky, but it's a lot of the cool stuff that's like right on the edge that's happening really quickly. Chloe, did you have anything else to say about the programs?
Yeah, I just wanted to add the IPS aspect of it. So like there are segments and then there's sectors. Sectors? Is that what IPS would be?
It's I think it's a department.
Yeah. So it just focuses on the logistics of the space and airborne division. And it's really cool because you get to look at multiple aspects of the development, the sustainment. It's not just one thing. So that's the biggest thing for me, is just being able to see the whole picture and not just one piece of the puzzle.
That's a really interesting point. Tech writer is a super general term, and it means different things at every company in every industry. In a government industry like this, in a defense industry, maybe even in probably in more of a defense industry, you're going to see the IPS. It stands for integrated product support. It's sort of how they just align a bunch of these support elements that go into So you've got the project, you've got the product, and then IPS supports that. And IPS, like Chloe said, is a lot of different things. You've got the tech writers, you've got the tech trainers, we've also got logistics guys, we've got product handling and shipping, we've got guys that write up big long reports about what the product is going to need in 5 and 10 and 6 years. We have depots. So definitely, if you are excited about more than just, here's a stack of documents, churn out a report and keep moving. Like she said, it's a really cool place to be. If you are in a different industry, it might be set up differently. You might have a whole bunch of tech writers and they're all together, and that's who you talk to, is a bunch of tech writers. Other companies, like a startup, you'll probably just be in the room with everybody all the time, because you're the one person who's trying to develop the documentation alongside of the development of the product. So
Right.
it's different in every industry. We really enjoy it at L3Harris because we get a chance to touch a whole bunch of stuff. It's not like maybe I'll get to see something. It's almost guaranteed. The week
Right.
before I went on vacation, I heard down the hall one of the other IPS people was getting some training, and I ran over and said, "Hey guys, can I learn about PHS&T?" And they were like, "Sure." So
Yeah,
it's a very cool place.
it's very hands-on, definitely. I'm not sure if you or John have heard of rabbiting, but you can actually go and see the trainers in action, the FBI, police, government students being trained on the equipment that L3Harris developed. That has actually been one of my favorite parts of being a new L3Harris employee, is seeing it in action, seeing people use it, seeing people learn about it, and then getting to write about it as well.
That's right. You'd mentioned, I think, when you first started, that you were really interested in the usability test aspect of tech writing, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and I've definitely been able to move into that a little bit by rabbiting. So
Awesome.
I got a new group leader, Jason Nagy. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a trainer, so he kind of helped move me into that aspect of the technical field.
Awesome. Some of the other stuff I get to work on, so we've talked about the sort of the programs. There's also the stuff with the department that Chloe was mentioning with IPS. I've gotten to work on proposal support, which is really pretty rare at a new college grad level, but luckily it was just the right time and the right person, and I was able to come in and do some tech editing on a proposal, and that was super cool. There's a huge push at L3Harris for continuous improvement. It's not just something that kind of happens. You're actually encouraged to get your Lean Basics certificate. I had done a project for that I think I'd started my project for that within a year. So continuous improvement is super important. I think we get a bad rap maybe in the defense industry because it's kind of just been chugging along for so long that it might not seem as new and flashy as a Google or whatever. But this culture of continuous improvement means that we're constantly bringing in new ideas and incorporating best practices and really developing what we're doing. And I think that's definitely one of my favorite parts. Chloe, have you started an E3 project?
I have not been able to start an E3 project yet. I did do all the training for it, but I just haven't been able to. I need to come in office more and see what I can get my hands on, see where I can really start saving money for the company,
Yeah, start making everybody's lives a little easier.
Exactly.
Some of the other work I've done, I built a template library. That was one of the first things I did when I walked in as a full-time employee. Was I got assigned to the group was in Colorado Springs, and they needed a template library, and that's vastly different from, I did a whole bunch of tech editing and formatting for 6 to 9 months. And then, like I said, over the summer, I was overhauling and updating a manual. And now I'm actually drafting new content. So because it's such a big company, which I'm sure Chloe and John have heard me talk about it going, oh my gosh, this place is huge. But because it's so big, you have so many opportunities. I have notes. That's what I'm looking down at when I when I'm looking down. Okay, the other one, there's a note that I have no idea what it means, but maybe it'll come back to me. Software. You'd asked, it had come up what kind of tools we use on a day-to-day basis as technical writers. So I actually want to jump back a tiny bit and talk about what technical writing is in our field. Like I said, it means a lot of different things in a lot of different places. Just because a company has a tech writer doesn't mean the engineers aren't writing continuously all the time. The engineers are writing down everything that's ever happened and ever will. But the documentation that they're producing, that's technical data, that's internal, that's the other engineers looking at it, that's somebody coming behind them and reproducing a test to make sure the results are the same. That's engineers talking to engineers. It might even be with a customer, our engineers talking to their engineers, but that's very high level kind of, they use a lot of shorthand with each other. They can kind of skip steps along the way and be like, you know, the thing over there. And as opposed to technical writing focuses on the user. So sometimes the user or the reader, sometimes the reader is going to be another engineer, in which case, cool, let's use all the shorthand you want, all the jargon you want. Sometimes it's going to be the user, and the user won't have an engineering background. They won't have, you know, some of this stuff, my guidance is we're writing to a 9th grade reading level. So taking all that data and turning it into usable user content is what a tech writer really focuses on, although we're a jack of all trades, so we get tapped to do a lot of stuff. But the idea, if you're interested in tons of research, talking to a bunch of SMEs, a bunch of subject matter experts, if you like kind of figuring out how it all works on paper and writing it all down and then walking into the lab a week later and then being like, here's the real thing, and you're like, well, that doesn't match at all, go rewrite that. That sounds like a drag, but it's really fun, because if you walk in and look at the product first, you're just like, well, that's a hunk of metal, neat. But because we get to go in there and read all that technical documentation, all that technical we read engineering drawings. I'm trying to think of what other source material we use. Chloe, can you think of anything like that?
Source material, like we'll use manuals from the manufacturers a lot of the time.
The stuff that the engineers have written a lot of times. So that's kind of that's the difference between a technical writer, kind of what their spot is on the team, versus, because the engineers are literally writing continuously. It's just that kind of that switch between I'm writing to develop versus I'm writing to teach a user who's never touched this before how and what to do. So some of the tools that I've used at L3Harris, MS Word is everywhere. We're trying to move away from it constantly, but it's everywhere because everybody knows how to use it.
Yep.
Yeah. I really enjoy Word. I was a paralegal for 15 years before I came back to school. So I have a whole bunch of like Word experience from back then. And that's one of the highlights of my day, is when somebody comes to me and goes, hey, what button do I push to do X? And I'm like, I actually know the answer to that one. So take some time in MS Word, learn stuff like formatting. And I'm talking about like using the styles, not just formatting characters or lines, but actually learning how to use the styles. You're going to be tagging each paragraph with a style. It's very fun.
Yes, that's very important at L3Harris. I learned that the hard way when I first started, definitely.
Yes, I spent several months, and that was just what I did. Was every day somebody would show up and hand me a document, and it would just be going through and if you're familiar with HTML and CSS, MS Word actually works a little bit like that. So learn HTML and CSS too. Red lines is the other thing we use a ton in Microsoft Word. So it seems pretty obvious, but when you're actually dealing with it on a super deep level, it gets a little bit more complex trying to figure out who's doing what and tracking all of that versioning. When you're working on projects at school, it's a great time to get kind of practiced on that. I also use Confluence a little bit. That's cool. I've gotten to use Photoshop recently. That makes me very happy. Some programs will use Photoshop. Some of them will just say, open it in Paint, just take that part out. So it differs from program to program. And then we also use PowerPoint a lot, especially for interdepartmental communication. Chloe, is there anything else you've worked on?
Yeah, I've actually had the pleasure of working on a few different platforms. Mainly I work in FrameMaker, which it's definitely a learning curve at first, but once you get used to it, it can be a little bit easier than Word, depending on how long the documentation is. Like if you're just writing 4 or 5 pages, don't use FrameMaker, use Word. But if it's a long manual, FrameMaker is the way to go. And then I've had a great time messing with graphics on Adobe Illustrator. That's probably one of my favorite things to do. I don't know if you remember Julie Harrison, but she maintained a lot of the graphics for the technical orders on Meadowlands. And since she left, that has kind of fallen onto me. And Adobe Illustrator is a great tool. Again, very complex, but once you learn it, it's like secondhand. It's a lot of fun. It's easier than Paint once you get the hang of it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Remind me to pick your brain about it, actually, because
Definitely.
I need a better solution for annotating figures
Okay,
than what I'm
sure.
using right now.
Yes, I can help you out with that. Adobe Illustrator is great for that.
Awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit more about L3Harris and IPS culturally. L3Harris has put a lot of work. So L3Harris used to be 2 different companies. I joined, like I said, in summer of 2020, and they had just come together. L3Harris Technologies, I think, and I'm sorry, L3 Technologies something, and Harris were 2 separate companies, and they came together. Since I'm not sure what the culture was like before that, because like I said, I got there right when they combined, but they've put a ton of effort into trying to build employee engagement, making sure that you've got people all the way down the line checking in on people, getting people involved. What's your goal? What do you want to do? What do you want to learn next? Sometimes that stuff becomes kind of passive over the years, especially in a big old company. You might lose sight of that, but they've put a ton of effort into trying to get people really excited about not just coming to work every day, but building your career alongside with building the projects that they're working on. Some of the ways they do that is we've got a homepage. I'm sure most companies do, but ours is getting updated like 3, 4, 5 times a day. So I can look on there and see stuff about what's happening in maritime. I can see what's happening with the FAA. Like I said, it's that getting to see everything. We've also got a very cool GL structure, a group lead structure. So the person directly above me has 5 or 6 other people that they manage. That means that I have somebody that almost always I can go say, hey, knock, 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 I have this question, and she'll know where to send me, as opposed to just being one of 30 or one of 45 people that's in a group and you kind of wander around figuring out who to ask. Because we're in IPS specifically, our department has spent a lot of time over the past few years building a culture of support, but also we're trying to make sure that everybody feels like they have what they need, but also has the room to try something new, go see what else is out there. And I really appreciate it. Even within L3Harris, I think the 4 of us lucked out in getting to be part of integrated product support on SAS. Did you have anything else to add, Chloe?
One thing I would like to add that has been honestly helpful for me, I have a disabled child. So the ERGs, They are employee resource groups, and there are a bunch. There's early career professionals, there's technology and innovation resource groups, there's Pride, there's WE3, which is women's group, and then there's WILLA, which I love, which is willing and able. It's just a very inclusive environment. I've never worked at a place like this that is just strives to be inclusive and accept everyone and gives everybody the opportunity to grow. It doesn't matter your ability or your willingness. Well, your willingness matters, but everybody gets the opportunity to grow, and they make sure of it with the programs they have. And I mean, they give everybody opportunities to grow, old, new. It doesn't matter what kind of employee you are, you have the ability to grow. So that's one thing that really sold me on L3Harris.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have a quick section on recommendations, but do you want to ask questions and I can drop them in, or do you want me to finish up on recommendations and we'll come back to questions? What would you like to do?
We did have a hand raised in the call, so I guess we could do a couple questions in between.
Sure.
Mirwan, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yes. As Melissa was telling earlier, you guys use Microsoft Word a lot on the job. How often do you guys use Google Docs, like when you're working with the multiple teams?
We use the Microsoft 365 in place of Google Docs, so that's still Word, but it works similar to Google Docs in that you can have multiple authors in there writing at the same time. It's keeping track of all of that versioning. I've had difficulty actually getting people to use that. When I start a document that way, everyone's kind of just used to the old-fashioned way where you've saved it into a network folder somewhere.
Right.
That said, all of a sudden one day, not even a program, it was just one tiny team within a team within a team came to me with a document and said, here's the link on Office 365. And I was like, okay. So it's all out there and it's all growing. I think the more that they use that kind of collaborative writing tool, the more we're going to see it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Awesome. And do we have one more question from Andrew in the chat. Andrew said he'd like to ask a question as well.
Yeah, so my question is, like, what is the like, this is based off like when you're talking about the culture, like within the company, like how is the content and the interactions within the workplace?
Chloe, you want to go first? I say so many words.
Sure, yeah. What was the question one more time? Sorry, I was looking at my email.
Oh yes, I hope everybody heard me clearly. How is the conduct and the interactions between employees in the workplace? Like, is it just like a laid back kind of thing where everybody does their own work and then collaborates at the end, or is it more of like a teamwork based collaboration?
That mostly depends on the program you're working on. I feel like I've worked on some programs like F35 where you are constantly talking, you're constantly collaborating with the engineers. And then I've worked on the programs that I'm working on now where, you know, they give you a project and you kind of just figure it out yourself, ask questions when you need to, take online courses to figure out the platforms. But that's another thing that's great about L3Harris. You can kind of pick what atmosphere you want to work in. If you want to be more collaborative, or if you want to be more laid back, doing your own thing, like you really can pick. There's so many opportunities.
I'll add to that. It also changes throughout the course of a project. So early on, you're probably going to have a lot of meetings as they're trying to figure out what they want to build and how. In the middle, you might get some kind of quiet time where everybody's off doing whatever it is. And then when you're coming back together for like demos and stuff with the customer, I just walked into a lab today that just had people going in every direction. So I've never had a bad experience. I've never worked with anybody who's been rude or condescending. Even though I am a new college grad, everyone, it was actually surprising to me when I started I was kind of ready to come in as a blank page. Okay, what do you want to teach me? And instead they were like, here's an assignment. And I was like, well, how do you want me to do it? And they were like, well,
Yeah.
you're the tech writer, so use your best judgment.
Exactly. They
so
don't talk down to you.
Yeah, it's very cool to come in where we all kind of know everybody's a professional in their own field. And so it makes it a lot more fun to work in groups.
Okay, thank you so much. That you answered a lot. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, and it looks
Okay.
like those were the main questions for now. So you two can feel free to keep going to next topics too.
Perfect. I wrote down a couple of recommendations. I could give recommendations forever, mostly because you get to be talking about tech writing, and I love tech writing. The first thing, the biggest thing for new college grads, for kids in college, people in college, or right after in the tech writing field, you need to develop, or if you have gotten the Tech Comm degree, the first thing you need to do is develop your technical side. So tech writing is this amalgamation of technical and writing, which seems like duh, but it's really, when I came out of school, I had a whole lot of theory on how to write collaboratively, how to manage a project. I took some classes in editing and stuff. I knew a lot about the writing part, and I knew tech existed. But that was like one of the first questions that you'll get in an interview is, what do you know about technology? So just be ready for it. You can do it a lot of different ways. You guys are still in school. You can take courses. I took HTML for tech writing or something, which isn't super technical, but you're building a website. You can say to them, yes, I've done HTML, I've done CSS. Any courses you see, if you take a tech focused course, put it on your resume, make sure you're ready to talk about it at an interview. You can also do your own research. At my interview, I was encouraged to research topics like small satellites and drones, because that was just what was top of mind at the time. But if you find a piece of technology, it really doesn't matter if it's something we're working on or someone else is working on. If it's something you like and you can do some research about it and then turn around and write that down. I would suggest, if you've got a portfolio online, you can usually add a blog to that and just write a blog post about what you learned. Okay, today this is what I know about small satellites. These are the companies that I talked to. This is what they're being used for. And that's a really great way that you can demonstrate to an interviewer, I know how to research a technical topic, and I know how to then turn around and write about it. For my engineering guys, you kind of want to go back the other direction. Take some time and do some research on editing, on writing in general, in how to use a style guide. You just kind of want to make sure that in an interview, you can do both sides of it. I obviously am not an expert. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an expert on the tech side, but because I could come in and say, well, yes, I have this knowledge, I had something to talk about. The other one is podcasts and YouTube. It sounds a little lame. I'm not sure. I would normally say, hey, tell an interviewer you watch podcasts and YouTube. But I actually did on my interview. I was like, no, my husband and I sit around and watch. He worked up at the Cape at the time. So we watch like Scott Manley, who talks about rockets and launches and stuff. And, Adam Savage and all that stuff. It's just part of how I've learned about tech. So it's just about developing that other side of it. Some of the things specifically that you're going to want to look for, if you see it, grab it. Any classes you see on reading engineering drawings, it seems like it would be easy, but it can take some practice. Engineering drawings and parts lists. Anything you can learn about how CAD works and 3D modeling works. 3D modeling is very important right now. We're all trying to transition from working in drawings to working in models, which there's some really cool topics about it that they've talked about, how now that we're doing it in a 3D model, we've reduced the amount of errors like astronomically. It's very cool. And I think that was it. What else do you think, Chloe, about getting your tech side built up?
Yes, that's definitely very important. That is something that they'll just kind of throw you in the water at L3Harris. When I first came in, I did have some experience writing about technology. I actually worked for a software company, but I'd never written about hardware. And writing about hardware and software, those are two different animals. So yes, any hardware that you can get your hands on. My first piece of hardware that I worked on was actually a rotary drill for drilling holes into a pipe. And it sounds easy, but it's not. So I feel like that was really great experience for me first getting in, but it is something I would have liked to have had experience in before. So as Mo said, just look at pieces of hardware and see if you can create user-friendly documentation on them, because that will help you in your journey at L3Harris. I mean, obviously you'll learn that a lot here, but getting that experience first will definitely help you get acclimated to the waters of L3Harris.
Great. The next one is my advice personally, and Chloe and John may disagree with me, but I think it's super important to be in person if you possibly can. Being in person for your first year, for your first 2 years, where an engineer could just walk by and be like, hey, come look at this, and you can jump up and go into a lab, is super important. Like I said, I heard somebody training down the hall and I was able to show up and start taking notes. Being on campus keeps you in front of people. They remember that you're there. I had my current boss, we just met like 3 months ago because we happened to be at a meeting together, and he was like, I didn't even know we had a tech writer. And so he scooped me up onto something. Making those face-to-face, I know it sounds boomery to be like, oh, you have to be in the office, because we all know how to work online now. But just try. If you can do it for that first year or two, to me, it's where you're going to get that really cool. It's not about the water cooler talk so much. It's about literally you'll have an engineer walk by with a drill and you'll be like, where are you going? Can I see? And they'll just scoop you up and take you along.
Exactly. I totally agree. That was something that was nice about being on my first couple of programs, because I was in plant more. I was working with engineers more. And I'm hoping further down the line with this program, I do get to do that more, because you're right. It really is hands-on is how you learn with writing about hardware. So I definitely agree.
That said, the opposite side of that is L3Harris has developed a robust remote work program. During COVID, when I did my internship in 2020, everyone was remote. If you didn't have to be in a lab touching equipment, if you didn't have to be in a vault on a secure machine, then everybody was at home, and they learned, they adapted. I think it was extraordinary for a company that size to be able to shift gears to putting kind of everybody remote. It was amazing to watch. And I think L3Harris has really learned from that and has kind of kept that moving forward. They're encouraging, a lot of come back to the office, because it does help with brainstorming and shooting ideas together. But at the same time, I love that if I'm not putting hands on something and I've got the roofer coming, I can just work from home that day. I did work from home for, like I said, a couple of months. It was a cool dynamic, and in a couple of years, I could definitely see myself going back, working with my department to get into a position where I could work remote, at least part-time. Right now, I'm full-time in plant. Okay, the next one, I see that we're at 7:21. You're gonna have to actually jump in and cut me off if we run out of time. So I'm okay with it. You're okay with it. It's fine.
If I lose you guys, my battery died. I'm sorry, my charger's in the other room.
The next one is learn editing skills. Like I said, new tech writers end up doing a lot of formatting and a lot of editing. It's an amazing way to learn how documentation is written, what the writing style is, what the company's writing style is. It's an easy thing for us to kind of get you up and moving really quickly on. So if you've got a little bit of background on editing, I took a course like my senior year that I think there was a technical editing course. I also took a professional editing course that I think was out of another school, another college, I don't remember which. Getting your idea around, getting your head around the idea that you're not editing based on your own preference, but you're using style guides, understanding what a style guide is, figuring out how to develop a style sheet for a program, because every situation is going to need whatever it's going to need, and being able to keep a style sheet so that A, you keep yourself going in the right direction, but B, you can share it with additional people. All that stuff is, I think editing is a great thing to have in your back pocket. The next one is research skills. I just read a really cool book that was talking about how tech writers should probably be closer to journalism than to like literature, because tech writers interview people all the time. They might be short, where I walk in and say, hey, how does this connect to that? They might be longer, where I say, okay, guys, you haven't built anything yet, but I need a document drafted. So tell me what you think it's going to look like. Being able to prep for that so that you have meaningful questions, you walk away with meaningful data that you can use. That's a little bit of a science, a little bit of an art, but if you can do some work ahead of time to get yourself ready for that, all the better. And then second to last is read. That's one of the biggest things that a tech writer does, and we never really talk about it. But one of the biggest differences between the technical communicator and everybody else on the team is that we're reading closely. When we pick up a document, we're not skimming, we're reading each word and each sentence, if that's the kind of edit we're doing on it. So learning to read closely is, again, it's something that you learn, it's a skill you develop. And so why not do it with books about tech writing? I just handed Angelica a copy of one of the books I really like called The Product is the Docs. I think the author is Gales. That was The Products is the Docs. That's a pretty good one that talks about how with Agile coming on the scene, documentation kind of keeps trying to get shunted off, and we have to kind of step up and say, no, listen, just because you're not documenting your ideas up front in the way that we used to, where we did we would draw it everything and make every decision on paper before we ever tried to prototype. Now we're moving in Agile where you're prototyping faster. That doesn't mean that your documentation, your user documentation goes away. User documentation is part of the product. So The Product is the Docs is a very cool book. And the other one I thought of this afternoon is Technical Writing Process by Morgan. I actually went through that one. I thought I was just going to skim through for pictures, and I ended up sitting and reading the whole thing. So that one's a pretty good book. Anybody? I don't know if Chloe's still here. And then my last piece of advice is curiosity. It's your best friend. It's the thing that's going to help you learn the new piece of technology, the new tool you're going to use, how to make friends and influence people. People want to tell you about this thing that they spent the last 5 years developing. Being curious, asking questions, being genuinely present to learn about everything that's happening, and there's so much happening, it is going to serve you really well, whether you're at L3Harris or anywhere else. A good Tech Comm is going to be constantly saying, but what does that do? And what does this button do? And then the other one is coming out of college is a really cool time to be fearless and to jump in. And when they say, hey, do you want to? Yes, I want to do that. Hey, do you think you might? Yes, I'll do that too. Even if it's out of your comfort zone. Everything is out of my comfort zone. But it's one of the things that you can really leverage because it's all new. So you might as well go learn all of it. So those are my recommendations. I think we've still lost Chloe. I'm ready for questions if anyone else has any. In the 3 minutes.
Chloe is here with us in spirit.
I'm actually here. I just have a crying baby.
Oh, Bunny.
Okay, got you. Oh, we got one from Jonathan. And also welcome, Jonathan. Yeah, feel free.
Hey, John. Sorry, I didn't say hello earlier. I feel slightly tired today. But anyway, my question, I guess, can be directed towards both of our presenters today. And I personally like that you went into description about why technical experience matters in technical writing and editing. But do you think it would be encouraged that for someone like me as an electrical engineer to pursue more projects as well and to be more into the projects as well and to be working on those aside from doing technical writing as well?
You're talking about like to get your resume ready for interviews?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like developing any sort of project, or like, for example, with the drill, if you were to be designing things like that, do you think it's helpful to have those technical writing skills?
I definitely think having a technical writing, having an understanding of Tech Comm is going to help you, because like I said, Tech Comm is all about writing for your reader. And if your reader is other engineers, that's great. If you're building a project together and you've written documentation that means another engineer can pick it up and use it in the next iteration of the product, the next version or whatever it is, that's awesome. If you learn to write user documentation, I think I was just talking to Angelica about this earlier. The engineers, they're great writers for what they're doing. When I explain, okay, but my job is to now take what you've written and turn it into user documentation, that I need to think about what they know and what they need to know and what they're trying to do with the product, what problem they're trying to solve. That's when the engineers all go like, never mind. Like, I'm glad you're here to take care of it. So if you as an engineer can get a handle on that, of when you're developing it from the engineering side, you're sort of thinking about all the things you want the user to be able to do, all the things you want the product to do, as opposed to pulling yourself out of that and flipping it around and saying, okay, what is my customer, what are they trying to do? What problem are they trying to solve? How can I make it easier for them to solve their problem? Learning about taking those ideas and applying them to the projects you're working on in your engineering degree, or even after that, it's going to help you. It's going to make you a valuable asset in a team if you can communicate both ways. Chloe, do you have anything to add? You just wave. You can't wave. I can't see you. Anyone else?
So on that note, we're reaching the end of our hour, but I will plug this link to the internship that is currently open for L3Harris.
Woo, internship.
Yeah. So I guess, would you want to say any remarks on the internship, Mo?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So we've got a summer internship. Like I said, I was the first one in 2020. John was our intern in 2021.
Caleb
Thank you.
Crawford.
Yeah.
All I had was Kyle, and I'm like, that's okay, that's not right. Caleb was with us last summer. He did an awesome job. He's coming back in this summer, I believe, as a full-time employee. So that means that we are, what, 4 for 4? 3 for 3 in converting interns into full-time employees. I am looking forward to this summer to try and keep the streak going. It's a really cool opportunity to get in, to really see what it is we're talking about in tech writing, to learn about different areas. Like I said, we're part of IPS. It's even if you just want to know more about what's going on, come on down, have an interview. We're going to talk to you about what your resume says, what we can offer you in the program and what you could offer us as a potential employee. And I'm really excited about it. If you have any questions, my email address is on the flyer. It's melissa.olds@l3harris.com. I would love to answer a question for you a week before an interview rather than you trying to intuit it or figure it out on your own. If you've got a question and it's straightforward, bring it on. And I can try and help you out.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Or
Sure
thanks,
thing.
Mo. Melissa, Mo. And hey, now we all know each other. So email Mo and just say, hey, Mo, I was at the meeting. Here's my
Yep.
resume. And yeah, I dropped your email in the chat. And yeah, it'll be great this week in between. Perfect time for all of that. And so yeah, with that, we are past the end of our hour. And definitely reach out anytime.
One more
And
thing. I'm so sorry.
yeah.
That internship is closing very quickly. It closes at the end of the month. So if you are interested in the internship, get me that resume ASAP. I think the closing date is the 31st. So hop to it.
Ooh, yeah, coming up real quick. So 1 week from now. So yeah, Mo's email, be sure to reach out to her. And yeah, so this was really great. I think it's a good time to start wrapping up. And Julianne, do you want to wrap up and any closing remarks for anyone as we end off the night?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you to everyone who came to the meeting tonight. We do have part 2 tomorrow. And I also wanted to thank the speakers for taking the time to come out and talk about their career and their field and why they find it so interesting. And now we know. And I'm really glad that they were very enthusiastic about it. So thank you so much. I think, unless we have any other questions, I think that's it for the night. Not seeing any other questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, is the internship open to current students only?
I think it's probably, I'd have to go back and double check. You can send me, if you send me an email, I will definitely look at it tomorrow morning. I believe it is current students, but I believe it's both undergrad and graduate students.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Feel free to just ask your question out loud if you have one.
Okay, thank you. I didn't it's just a quick question for Mo. Do you for the internships, is L3Harris very flexible with hours? Does it limit or do we have to come in full time? Do we have to be part-time? Does it coordinate with course schedules?
For the internship, there's not going to be as much flexibility. As a full-time employee, depending on the program, there's a lot more flexibility about like when you start your day and when you end your day. And like I said, some of us can work from home and all that. As the internship is only about 10 weeks. So we definitely want somebody who can come and be here in person. It is full-time as far as I know. I would encourage you, if you're interested in it, send me your resume and kind of tell me where you're at. And if you're bringing to the table what it is we're looking for this summer, then maybe we can find something that works well for everybody. Hold on just a second. Come in person. Last year they were offering relocation benefits for interns. It's my understanding they're going to be doing it again as well. That's through the actual parent corporation. So if somebody's interested in trying for the L3Harris internship, but you're living in Orlando or Oviedo or wherever it is, we can probably get you hooked up with something to help with that temporary relocation.
Quick question for Melissa. So for the internship, are you taking the resume just for the technical writing, or I saw like there's other internship also open for the L3 on the Palm Bay and Melbourne location? Are you All right. Got it.
So for the internship that I'm working on, it's the tech writing internship specifically, and we're in the Palm Bay location. I think I lost your question.
Yeah, that was my question. If you're taking only for the technical writing or any other too.
Now, the technical writing internship, I believe, does, I don't think it's strictly for tech writing majors. Look at the flyer. So if you're interested, send me your resume and we'll see what we can find out about you.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
All right, so any last questions from anybody? All right, I think we're good. So in that case, back to you, Juliana.
All right, yeah. Thank you all for coming. Again, big thank you. We definitely have, I'm not sure if anyone checked the chat for the speakers, but we definitely have a lot of thank yous and a lot of comments about how informative it was. So thank you very much. And I think we can sign off now. We're about done. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
think we're good.
stop recording.